Welcome to your creative journey. I'm going to start your week off with maybe some things to do on a journey, maybe some things not to do on a journey, and just tell you a bit about myself and a bit about some work and how I kind of do things and how I think. So I'm hoping this is going to work. Basically, this is me. I quite like stripes. When I was at my old agency, and you're thinking about doing your own brand, if you're going to set up on your own or anything like that, and I don't know if you ever do it as a project, but when I was at my old company, we had a fancy dress party, and somebody came. There was a Jack King and Queen, and somebody came dressed as me, and I was like, "How are they me?" And they were like, "Oh, they just had a stripy top on and red lipstick and a headband." And I was like, so when I had resigned, my boss had said, if you don't use those stripes as your branding, then you're daft. So I have used them since, and I've not come in full regalia. This is, when you put on a bit of a front and you go to things, you're a bit nervous and stuff like that. And I talk a lot about war paint and putting on your face to get ready. You're going to meet a client, you're going for an interview, you're going to do whatever. And so this lipstick for me is like me putting on my war paint to come, sort of makes me somehow stand a bit taller, feel a bit braver. So guys, I recommend it as well. It's a good look. I have a very bad habit of doing this. Because this is a student talk, I'm not going to do it today. But I'm going to talk about two journeys, and one journey is going to be about me, and one journey is going to be about my work. So, who am I? I'm a woman. I'm called Jack, which seems to confuse people even after about 30 years now. I run an agency called Jack Renwick Studio, which is a small branding agency in London and up in Argyll. I am the CEO, I'm the CCO, which is Chief Creative Officer, the Chief Financial Officer, and the Chief Operating Officer, the Chief Science Officer, the Executive Creative Director, the Chief Tea Maker. I am all of the things, and I have a team of designers, and I try and manage all of them. I'm a fellow of a thing called the ISTD, which is the International Society of Typographic Designers. There are 10 women in the world who have got that title, and I'm chuffed to be one of them. I think when they awarded me the fellowship, they thought I was a man, so I sort of sneaked through. I'm a board member of D&AD, if you know what that is. Do you know what D&AD is? Yeah. Oh, good. Right, I'll not explain it then. External examiner, art courses. I'm advisor to government and various design courses on what we should be doing about creativity in the UK. I'm a writer, even though I hate writing. I'm a judge and I'm a speaker. I was also the president of D&AD 2 years ago. Somebody else is the president now, so I don't care. I'm not bitter. I also own a holiday park up in Argyll in Scotland that me and my husband, Chris, who's at the back and speaking next, bought out of lockdown. Our intention up there was to create a design school, build a design school in these old barns and create a creative retreat for folk to bring their teams up and go kayaking, lockside swimming. We'd facilitate workshops, do all this sort of stuff, and it'd be a brilliant place to come up and recharge. But basically, we've been in lawsuits for about 4.5 years since we bought it, so I'm not allowed to talk about it. I'm from Glasgow. Glasgow rebranded itself because of me. And this is what Glasgow looked like in the 70s when I was young and growing up. That isn't me, but it looks like me a wee bit. This was my house. So I grew up in a high-rise flat, and when I went down to London and my old bosses found out I was from Glasgow and lived in a high-rise and stuff, it had a real sort of sense of like, like kind of, oh, who have we hired here? They were all very kind of like BBC type people, if you know what I mean. And I was just like this sort of sore thumb I was kind of like as if they'd hired me as like a sort of charity experiment or something like that, you know. Nobody could understand anything that I was saying. And I don't really think they were interested. I think they were just like ticking off some, you know, box of diversity that they had to hire or something like that. But I loved living in these flats. They've got a bit of a bad reputation now, but you had tons of pals and everything in that kind of environment. And, you know, you just played in the stairs and the lifts. And it was such a great, I guess, indoctrination into sort of having to learn to negotiate with people. And that's what our job really is as designers, is you have to learn to negotiate and sort of how do you get your way. So it's like, how do you get a shot of something? And that was where I learned all my negotiation skills, in that block of flats. This is my mum. That's my dad. I mean, to be fair, he's dead now, right? But I don't know, you can maybe tell why. And then that was me when I was wee, and I was quite sweet, and these were my two best pals. And then I got introduced to Buckfast, caramel wafers, and then that was my like diet for about 10 years. And then I've missed out a slide, but it was a picture of me with a gun. So I sort of toughened up on the mean streets of Glasgow. So when I was at school, right, I don't know, like graphic design had obviously been invented when you were at school probably. And but when I was at school, and I loved art, and I kind of hung about the art class and all that sort of stuff. But my teachers were like to me, "Look, Jack, you can't draw." And you know, sorry. They're like, "But you should think about doing this thing called graphic design." And I was like, what is it? And I just remembered hearing those words, right? And it's like graphic design, right? And I just thought, that's so fucking cool. It just sounds so cool. I want to do it, whatever it is. I mean, it could have been child murder or anything. I didn't care. I was just sort of like, graphic design. It just sounds amazing. And so the teacher had said he didn't know what graphic design was. He just sort of heard this word, and it was more about thinking than it was about being able to draw. So I went down to the job centre, and this is like my vision of graphic design. And I said to the job centre guy, like, I want to do graphic design. And the job centre guy's like, what's that? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, you know, and he's asking around the job centre, you know, does anybody know what graphic design is? No, I haven't got a clue. So he got out like his big phone book sort of thing, which was like the yellow pages in, which was like Google in a book sort of back then. And that was like the local businesses. So he went through it all, you know, A, B, C, whatever, got to G, kind of like as if a miracle was going to happen at graphic design would be in there. And there was two wee phone numbers and 2 entries in this book. So he phones up the first one and goes, got a wee lassie here. Hiya, I got a wee lassie here. She wants to be a graphic designer. And it was Call Quick printers they were calling. And Call Quick's like a 24-hour print shop. You know, like high street printers. You can go in, get your A4s done, or get something bound or something like this, you know. And so I'm like, you know, like he's on the phone, like this is it. And he goes, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, da, 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 have you got a portfolio? And he's like, have you got a portfolio? And I'm like, no, what's that? And he's like, what's that? And then he's like, oh, it's like a big bag of pictures, a big suitcase of pictures. And I was like, no, I haven't got one. And he's like, no, she's not got one. All right, thanks anyway. And then put the phone down, and that was it. You know, the dream was over. And it was like, oh, fuck, you know, pure crushed. And then he was like, I'll try this other one. So he phones this other one, and literally, you know, the writing was on the wall, because he just goes, I've got a wee lassie, she wants to do graphic design. When can she start? Monday? Right, no, right. And I'm like, and he's like, that's it, you can start on Monday up at this place. And I was just sort of like, fuck, what? I was like, right, I'm going to be a graphic designer now. So I turned up at this place, and what it was an adult learning centre for folk who had sort of not done very well at school and were going to do vocational subjects. And when I had turned up, they had just said, like, what size of shoe are you? And I was like a 2. And they're like, I've not got a 2. And I was like, a 3? And they're like, no, not got a 3. And I was like, what have you got? And I'm like, no idea what he's going to give me. And he was like, I've got a 5. I was like, I'll take it. And then he comes out with these big steel toe cap boots, and then gave me a boiler suit, a mask and a welder's mask, and these gloves and all that kind of stuff. And I was just sort of like thinking, fucking hell. I was like, graphic design is fucking cool as anything. Like, you get to wear all this gear. And I was like, you know, looks like it's going to be dangerous, you know. And I was like, can't wait. So I'm like pure excited to become a graphic designer at this point. And then it turned out that what I was going to be doing was welding ramps for disabled, like for like council houses, disabled ramps sort of thing. So I learned how to be a welder at that point, thinking, some going to be graphic design about this. And I didn't know what graphic design was. So I didn't know whether, I was doing the right thing or not. So I was just enjoying myself. And then I was learning how to upholster couches, like reupholster couches for homeless shelters. And I'm doing this, quite the thing, thinking, it's graphic design, and loving it. And then I was learning how to sew pockets onto aprons in the factory bit. And the principle was that you had done all this learning, and the kind of highlight of the whole thing was going to be, if you could sew pockets on fast enough onto these aprons, you would get the job in the factory. And like that's what you would do for your career, would be like a pocket sewer on aprons. And so everybody's going, like a million miles an hour, and I'm like pure perfectionist, lining it all up and wanting my stitching to be all perfect and all the rest of it. So I was just like far too slow. So I never got the job, and that was it. My career in what I thought was graphic design was over, and they fired me. Yeah, it was too slow. And then when what I had done at this, also while I was taking a break from the welding, was that they had this old classroom that didn't get used anymore, and in it had been like this hot metal type press with old lettering. And I used to go in and like just mess about with it and sort of taught myself how to sort of letter space stuff and things like that. And then when I got fired, I phoned this guy up who had appeared one day at this adult learning centre. And I said, I've been fired. Do you know any jobs going? I'm like, now a graphic designer. And he's like, you're not really. And I'm like, no, I can weld everything. And so I turned up at this place, and it was a print shop, and it had a 2-colour litho machine. And my job was using old rub-down lettering called Letraset. And if you haven't had a go on it, it's good fun. And I had like about 20 different sheets of fonts, and there was 20 different images down the side of a card. So you could choose like a Ferrari, maybe some balloons, fireworks, stuff like that, football. And then I would I would rub down whose party it was. This is Sharon's 18th. And I'm like choosing all these different fonts, thinking this looks amazing. And then I would print it up on the 2-colour litho machine. And then with the litho machine broke one day, I got fired. And then that was it. My career again was over. What it turned out, actually, this printing thing wasn't a printers at all. It was a drug den, and it was just a pure front for selling drugs. So these invites would sit on top of all like boxes of coke or whatever was going out, heroin, whatever. And there was no Sharon. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm pure crafting this thing. Do you know what I mean? And like, they just didn't exist. I was absolutely devastated. And then I met this guy, not him, but I met this guy. I worked in a load of shops, sports shops, and just high street shops selling stuff. And this guy came in and he said, "Oh, here you're a bit arty and all the rest of it, and I need somebody to come up and be a sign writer, like a junior sign writer." And I was like, "Aye, I'll do it." And I thought sign writing would be doing all sort of signs like this, it'd be just, and I would maybe have a berry or something. And then when I got there, I got fired anyway, but I'm giving the game away. The signs that I was making was things like that. That was Mr. Brown. And so I'm thinking the sign writing thing's going to be like, just really beautiful, all this sort of creativity and all the rest of it. And I got to basically use either Helvetica or Times New Roman, and I would set somebody's name and what their position was, and I'd dip it in a bath of acid, and then I'd fill it with either black paint or white paint. That was my level of creativity. I did that for about 3 years. I know. I mean, it takes practice to get the spacing of those letters just exactly right, And then I also worked at the weekend in this sports shop, and I met this guy called Ed. And I haven't got too much time to go into all about Ed, but he was where I was from, and he was at Duncan and Jordan School of Art. And I just immediately was like, I fucking love this guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, amazing. Like, you went to art school. Like, how do you do it? What did you do? How did you get in? and he told me about like the portfolio case, and he told me about like you have to fill out a form and all that sort of stuff, and you have to apply to the uni. So I was like, I had no clue. Like I didn't come from any background where Andy was ever at uni or college or anything like that. I just wasn't allowed. And so he was like, right, we'll go up and we'll go to the Glasgow College of Building and Printing and get a form, and we'll fill it out. And so he decided he would help me try and get into college. So when I had, this is the College of Building and Printing in Glasgow. When I was there, it was known as the College of Smoking and Drinking, and which I partook in, I must admit. And when I had been doing my welding, I got sent to the College of Building and Printing for a day, and on that day we were supposed to be learning how to use the litho printing machines, how to fix them and repair them. And the teacher wasn't there, so we got put in the graphic design class, and we were all like, like a big like load of thugs, in the boiler suits, up the back of the class, like pure causing a riot and everything. And thinking that everybody doing the design was just all like a bunch of fannies and all this. We're like, but the teacher had said, right, if you want, get a bit of paper and a pencil, and we're creating a logo, and we've got a garden centre that we're going to create a logo for, like, you're welcome to have a go. So I had to go, and the teacher came over and said, at the end of the day, he said, I had done like some really nice logos, and he's like, oh, you should maybe think about coming here. So this had been like years earlier, like years ago. And then so I went up to the building printing with Ed, and I chapped on this door, and I said, look, I'm looking for a guy called Jerry Rafferty. And then he went, oh, he's down the hall. So he was still there, and I went to his door, and I was at, Jerry Rafferty, I came here 5 years ago. I drew a logo. You really liked it, and you said I should come here. So I'm here. And he was like, right. He was like, what do you want me to do about it? And I was like, well, I want to do graphic design. And he was like, well, you can't just turn up and go, I want to do graphic design. I was like, how not? And he was like, well, it doesn't work like that. You have to apply, and you go through all these interviews and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, Jerry, I have been working for years. I saw you. You told me to come here. I'm here. What are you going to do about it? And he was like, well, I'm not going to do anything about it. And I was like, well, you have to. And I was like, because I've just left my job to come here. I hadn't really. And he was like, well, I can't just let you in a class. And I was like, why not? And he was like, well, because you have to apply and you have to do all this stuff. And I was just like, look. So I just sat there basically all day. And I just sat outside his door because I genuinely had nothing to lose at this point in time. Do you know what I mean? I was like, this is the only chance I'm ever going to have to do graphic design. And he's the only contact I know in graphic design or any way of ever sort of getting into it. So I just sat there, and he kept stepping over me all day. Do you know what I mean? Like just outside his door. And he was like, there's nothing I can do. And I'm like, well, you'll need to do something. And I was like, I'm going to be here in the morning. I'm just going to sleep here tonight. And he was just sort of like, like, fuck. So he knew he wasn't getting rid of me. And then he was like, look, here's a form. Fill it out. Bring me a portfolio in a week's time. I said, I'll try and interview you and squeeze you into the class. So I went away, drew a load of shite in a portfolio. Ed helped me like put some stuff together, pretend it was a brief and things like this. And then I went back, and Jerry was just like, that's a load of shite. And I was like, I know. But he said, look, I'll give you a chance. I'll put you in this HNC class for 2 weeks. And if you make an arse it, you're out. And I was like, no, I don't want to get into the HNC class. I want to get into the HND class. HNC was like a year less than that, and the HND was like a 2-year course, a bit higher. So I was like, put me in the HND class. And he was like, oh, fuck. So he was like, right, I'll put you in it 2 weeks, and then you're out. And I was like, okay. So I did it. I went in for 2 weeks. Genuinely, I was like the best in the class within like day one, like hands down. And then I won their first award. This was like a Scottish award for graphic design. And then I was in the paper. And then I was showing it to my mum and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, what is it you do? And I'm like, graphic design. She's like, what's that? I'm like, oh, fuck, nobody knows how to explain it. I've been the president of D&AD, and I don't know how to explain graphic design. But I was all chuffed that I was in the paper. And then this was my dream coming true. I did my HND, and then I applied to go to Duncan and Jordanson up in Dundee. And Dundee doesn't look anything like this. It was suicide capital of Scotland at that point in time. And but I went there, and I did 3 years doing my honours degree. And I remember arriving at this art school, like yous here, just even walking into this space, you just get a sort of sense of creativity and a sense of like opportunity, like you can make things and things can happen and it's down to yous. And I just want to, it makes me want to come back to art school. But I remember walking in, and I had been working for about 7 years at this point in time, like 7 days a week, like pure killing myself. And going in and getting set this brief, and they just said, pick a colour out of a hat, and I picked green. And they were like, right, you've got a month. And I was like, a month to do what? And they were like, just explore green. And I'm like, what? Is that it? Do you know what I mean? It was like, just explore green and make something with green. And I just thought, fucking hell, like, this is art school, and like, this is what creativity is, and what an opportunity. I can do anything I want. And honestly, if you get green, I was a Celtic fan, and I did, I wish I had some pictures, but I made some like signage to Celtic Park, but I made it out of, like fake grass, like acrylic sort of grass. And then I made all this kind of like road signage to get to how to get to Celtic Park for the train station sort of thing. And then like all the kind of signage around the grounds. And it was all made out of this grass sprayed like white, like the lines on the pitch and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like the most exciting thing, because you could just do anything. And I'm just so envious of yous where yous are at, wherever it is on your journey. In the final year, I entered the D&AD competition, and the brief was to design a calendar for a homeless charity. And I sort of like, right, how could I look at a calendar quite differently, or what could I do that was a bit different? And the whole sort of strapline of this charity was about helping people get off the street and get on their feet. So I looked at this sort of like evolution of man, and like from like through the whole Homo sapien to standing up, and it was like a guy on the street and he gets up on his feet, and the whole thing was made of stamps. And back then, 100 years ago, people used to use stamps, and 100 years ago they used to use calendars as well. And so this was a dream combination. The stamps where you would tear them off each day, and it had a wee message about the charity, and each time you used it, you were helping somebody get off the street and on their feet, sort of thing. And all the money from the stamps went to the charity. So I won the student yellow pencil for that. I was dead chuffed, and it was in the book and all this kind of stuff. And this was the start of the sort of reality of going into industry for me. And it was the student really understands the London connection and has totally immersed himself in it. So when I went to the D&AD Awards and they announced that I had won it, and I went up, I was like, I'd kind of secretly found out I had won it, because I'd went for an interview that day and I opened up the calendar and it said first prize on it while I'm in this interview. So I'm like, fucking hell, and then I take it you won it then. So I was kind of sitting there all smug during the awards and waiting for it. But when I went up to get my award, I'm like way up on the stage, first prize winners, Jack Renwick, I'm way up, quite the thing. And the guy on the stage giving out the awards was like, no, sorry, dear. Sorry, it's Jack Renwick that's won it. And I'm like, yeah, I know, that's me. And they were like, no, sorry, it's a boy. It's a boy that's won it, it's not you. And they're going, God, she thinks it's her. Like, Jack like shuffle me off to the side and like that. And the winner is Jack Renwick, Jack in the room, and doing all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm Jack. And so I'm standing like negotiating with this guy in the middle of like, the biggest event of my life at this point in time. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, no, I'm Jack. And he's like, no, it's a Jack, and he's obviously, pissed or something like that, Anyway, it kind of clocks on him when my lecturer stands up, who's in the audience, and shouts out, she's fucking Jack! Do you know what I mean? And I was like, thanks, Dave. And so eventually I got the pencil. And just a wee thing, this is I haven't got a good photo of it, but when I was creating this calendar and it was doing the evolution of this wee guy getting off the street and on his feet, I needed to, you didn't have Google and stuff like that to get pictures like that, so I needed to photograph somebody. And there was a guy who used to go about our art school, and I thought like he looked a bit kind of trampy, like a little bit like a tramp, but a bit indie, but like a tramp. And so I asked him if I could photograph him. So if he up on a table, and I would like take photographs of him in all these different poses, and the idea of tracing over them and making the calendar. And that tramp is Chris, who's speaking next. And then I married him. And So he's been there on my journey for a long time. So I ended up from my pencil getting a job at the #1 agency in London at the time, and they were called the Partners. And like, can you know what I mean? Like somebody like me, where I'm from, my background and all the rest of it. Next minute, I'm getting offered jobs at like these agencies down in London. It's like, you know, just bewildering, absolutely mind blowing. And when I was there, actually now they're called Design Bridge and Partners. They were Super Union and now they're Design Bridge and Partners. They're absolutely fantastic agency. They're recruiting all the time. Absolutely brilliant. Totally recommend applying. But I remember getting asked to rebrand the logo while I was there, and that was one of the sort of top, you know, jobs that you would get. I mean, asked to rebrand the company's identity, and I was like, you know, I've been chosen. You know, there's like 100 people there, sort of thing, and you're like, you know, I'm the chosen one. And I kind of thought there was nothing up with the identity. It sort of did the job. It was bold. It kind of, the parenthesis said the Partners. It did that. Could maybe do a bit of modernising, but it was fine. And what I said to them, actually, the perception, they wanted to rebrand because their perception was that they were sort of like very polite and not aggressive enough, you know, in their approach. And so they wanted to reposition themselves. And positioning, for anybody who's doing branding or anything like that, positioning is about how do you think about something? What's your perception of a company or a brand or a product or anything, or me? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's your perception of them? And how do you create that perception? And it's like, well, the identity that wraps around all of that stuff, how it looks, how it speaks, all the rest of it is what creates that perception. And I had thought the thing that would create the best perception was painting this dead client at the front door. And I was like, so rather than changing the identity and hoping that a logo is going to somehow change, kind of basically try and get more money off of clients was what it was all about. And so painted this client that any clients coming into the building had to like step over, like the dead client. And then when they would say, oh, what's that all about? We'd say, you know, like basically if you'd not come here for big ideas, then you'll probably die. We will probably kill you. And so if you want big ideas, come here. If you want shit ideas, go somewhere else. And that changed the perception of the company without touching the identity or the logo. When I was there was a brief national competition for the Metro newspaper to design the cover of the Metro. And the whole point was to kind of like wake people up on a Monday morning. And I hated the Metro because the Metro was, just get it here, free paper. Yeah, and so it was on the buses and the tubes, and there were millions of them, do you know what I mean? And you'd have to like move stacks of them to try and get a seat, and there was just a mess everywhere. So I had thought, rather than just design a cover for it, how can I get people to take the newspaper with them, take it off the train, and that'll solve the real problem, which is the perception that you had of Metro was it was just throwaway trash. And so I designed the front cover having flowers, and I printed, the idea was the front and back covers, inside front and back covers, and you could roll it up, you could make a bunch of flowers, and you could pass that on to somebody, and that would be a way of turning this trashy newspaper into a way of taking it off the tube. And that won the competition, and that ended up in the Metro, obviously, and then there was a picture of me in the paper and all the rest of it, and an explanation, and my mum saw it, and she's like, you know, I saw you were in the paper, and I was like, and she said, what did you do? And I was like, she's like, did you print the paper? And I was like, no. And she's like, did you grow those flowers? And no. Did you photograph the flowers? I was like, no. I was like, she's like, well, what did you do? And I was like, I came up with the idea to put the flowers on the paper, and she was just sort of like, you get paid for nothing, you know. It's like, and I'm like, you know, thinking this is a pure genius concept, and but yeah, she doesn't get it. One of the jobs I worked for there, I'm realising I'm speaking far too slow, was the opportunity to work for Stella McCartney and create her identity when she first set up her brand. And she was leaving Gucci and she needed her own label and her own sort of thing, and I worked with her to do it. This is what that's what the logo turned out like. And I found these up in the attic the other day when I was sort of clearing stuff out, and this is how this all started. Was I had thought kind of like Stella means light, you know, and I had thought, right, her identity, I want it to be like her name's in lights. and that you'd be able to see through all these holes, and it would create this sort of light effect. And you know, anything that you're doing, and I'm sure you are doing it now, it's like a labour of love to get to, you know, the right result. And, you know, literally I was bleeding over this job with like needles, using needles to puncture patterns and her name, and using different thicknesses of needles to see what the right size of hole should be, so I could then eventually get it laser cut for her. And so this took like nights and nights. You know, I'm in the house like stabbing these bits of paper with these needles to try and get the right sort of thing that would allow light through it and to make the identity. And then sort of she loved all that sort of idea, and that went on and sort of created a load of stuff for her, and like her first sort of packaging range with all these little holes and everything like that in it, which I was very proud of. Then I had a kidney transplant. This is a kidney, in case anybody doesn't know what a kidney looks like. You've got two of them in your back, and I needed a transplant, and my wee brother gave me a kidney, which is in here, and it's called Wee Bobby. I've had it for, it's called Wee Bobby because my brother's called Robert, and it's kind of like a battery. Do you know what I mean? Like they don't put the kidney in where you've got kidneys, they put it in at the front here, because it's near your bladder, and so all of that works. And so I had been at the Partners about 12 years when I had this transplant. I'd been waiting on the transplant for a long time, and I thought, I either go back and I'm just going to do the same thing for another 12 years, or I'm going to go back with my new battery and tell them to shove it up their arse, which is what I did, and decided I was leaving. And my boss, Greg, and this is a good tip in general, is that a really good idea, you should be able to boil down, be able to draw it on a Post-it note. And if you can draw it on a Post-it note, you know it's a good idea, because you've not got any the fluff, and you've not got any of all the effects and 3D and all of this stuff to hide behind, or motion or anything like that. It's like if you can draw it small, it's a good idea. So I thought, right, I'll just write that on a Post-it note, and I just put it on his desk and said, that's the best idea I've had in years. And but I'm not telling you or bore you about, you know, the legalities of getting out of the contract. Then I set up my studio. I drew that logo in about 2 minutes. Actually, Chris, did you do that logo actually for me? I don't think I knew how to use any of the tools by then. I had been directing. That's one thing, when you get into a small company, you usually stay on the tools. And then when you get into a bigger company, you start directing, and then you're sort of coming off the tools, and you're just kind of overseeing and guiding people on stuff. And it's a decision to make, you know, when you graduate and you're looking for work, and it's like trying different places. You know, the smaller the place, the more likely you are. And I sort of wish I still had those skills, but then I sort of directed for years, so I couldn't actually do anything. And so when I set up this studio, I couldn't even do my own logo. I had to like get Chris to do it. And so it was me, and I thought, right, I need a desk, and this is how you start an agency. And I didn't have a desk, but Chris had a studio, and he said he would charge me £200 a month for a desk. And I know, it's like, can you believe it? His wife charging £200, £200 for this desk. But again, I couldn't do anything, so I needed an intern. So I got an intern in, and I was like, Chris, haha, you said £200 a desk, and not £200 a chair. So I then ended up with 4 interns and me around this one desk for £200 a month. So negotiate when you're starting your studio, you know, make sure that you negotiate a good price. I don't get into a contract, just get into a verbal contract, a handshake. And then when I was going to get my sixth one, Chris told me to fuck off and get out. So I then had to get my own space, and this has been my sort of like mantra in my studio: blood, sweat, and tea. And that's what I think it takes, you know, to be a good designer in our industry and to succeed. You know, it's not easy. It's not a walk in the park. You know, you really have to work hard at it. If MD's here thinking that it's going to be a 9 to 5 and it's going to be, you know, a wee swanning about sort of thing, leave and go do something else, because it's not. It's hard work. This was our studio, just moved out actually. This is in Shoreditch. This is where the first Jack the Ripper murder was, just where that van is, the entrance of our studio. And I quite like that. Do you know what I mean? Like the sort of Jack the Ripper-ness of it all. This was the studio, and how we work is ideas on the wall first. Always everything hand drawn before wasting time on a Mac, wasting time drawing curves and spending ages, how you're going to execute it. If you haven't got the idea right first of what it's going to be, then you need to have your idea, and then you work out what the art direction and the styling of that is going to be that's appropriate to that audience, and I think you can waste a lot of time when you start on a Mac and you're sort of like playing about with fonts, or you're playing about with sort of visual effects and things like that. It's not about that. It's about getting the idea down, and then you start to think about how you're going to art direct that, how you're going to style it, what's the right styling for that audience and for that need. Not for what you want or what you think looks cool, but what you know that audience wants. So yeah, we have just ideas up everywhere, and that's how we live. And I don't know if you have that sort of practice here where you're sharing stuff, but it's really good to have stuff up. Other people see things that you have maybe missed, and when you're sort of surrounded by stuff, you start seeing things that you didn't see before. It's a bit harder, I think, digitally now, because you've got it in a file and it's sort of buried, and then you forget about it. But I like to try and surround myself with that stuff. Like stripes, so some of our branding is lots of stripes. We've got lots of international offices and studios around the world. You've probably seen them without realising that it's one of my studios. Come visit us sometime. Now, starting an agency, this was me when I started. This is the reality of when you run your own business. Get ready. That was me 6 months after it. And how I think is, I don't even know how I think. Do you know what I mean? I think we all think quite differently, but what I sort of see in life is just like sort of lots of observations and things. And I was eating this toast one day, and then I thought, oh, that looked like a wee rabbit, and it looked like it sort of eating a bit of that plate, and then I thought, I can't eat it. I'm not a vegetarian or anything like that, but I thought, I can't eat that. That's a sin. Like, do you know what I mean? Look how cute that wee thing is. And then so I just left it there, and then it was like mouldy for ages. Eventually had to put it out as misery, with a spade, This is a campaign that I had seen in a opticians in Spain, and I kept seeing this every day, and it was all these posters of these women all like that, and then every time I would walk past it, I'd be like, I'd go past it, and I'm getting like really annoyed, like every few days, like seeing them, fuck you, like the fuck, and so I got really irate, and I went into the shop, and I was like they obviously don't know they're offending everybody, and I was just like, look, I don't know what's going on, what you're playing up with this campaign, blah blah blah, and then they said, oh, the 2-for-1 campaign, and I was like, oh, all right. And so the whole point was that you got two pairs for the price of one. And if I had been able to read French or Spanish or whatever it was, I would have known that. So I think I was sort of jumping to conclusions. And but I think it's like, you have an international audience, you have to think responsibly. And when you're in the middle of working on projects, sometimes you think you've got a killer idea about something, but you have to just check how that sense checks, especially if it's a global brand. And then you realise that what you've done, which you think is this killer idea, can actually mean something really offensive, like in other places, and then you're back to the drawing board. This was an Evian campaign, and I saw it at the Tube one day. This girl had the same shirt on as them, and like I don't know what they're even supposed to be looking at, but they were looking at her, and I had the same shirt on as well, and I was going through a check phase, I think, and I was trying to get a photo of me, her, and like the poster, but the train was coming in, and I just managed to get her. But things like that just make me laugh, and then somehow they will find their way into a piece of work at some point in time. This was doing a talk up at Norwich, and they had these vinyls on the window of Robin Hood, which, when the blind's down, it looks like that. But I hadn't seen it with the blind down, and I'm like laughing to the students, going, haha, look, there's a giant Robin Hood out there standing on the road shooting everybody. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, there's giant Robin Hood, like, haha, and there's a cemetery behind him, do you know what I mean? And it's like, he's shooting everybody. And like when folk are just like looking out the window, Whereas I was like looking at the window and seeing the layering, and I was just sort of thinking, no, like you can see it, look, there's a giant Robin Hood there, just there. And they're like, where, you know, like out the window sort of thing. And I just thought, oh fuck, this talk's going to be terrible, which it was. I went through a phase of noticing floorboards, and every floorboard that I've seen looked bored. Do you know what I mean? Like I've never seen a happy floorboard. Right, they just look bored shitless. And so I thought, I'm going to create a book of floorboards, all bored, and then I got bored and I didn't bother. This is just a wee thing about observation, and you know, some things that you don't think are important, or but that you can bring sort of joy to anything really. This is a box for a bus company, and they could have just put a big logo on it. God knows what a bus company would need a box for, but the fact that in the handle of the box there's like a little rear view mirror, you know, of the bus drivers. They're quite jolly. They're not going to kill anybody because they've got the rear view mirror. And just those wee things that you think about and you can bring to your designs and those wee observations. And it's like, you don't have to do those sort of things, but I get a lot of sort of pleasure and happiness out of those kind of things and spotting those things and bringing them into my work as well. So I think basically it's like just keeping your eyes open, and that sort of keeping your eyes open helps you solve your own projects, really. That's my inspiration when I'm stuck on a project. I don't go to Pinterest or any design blogs or any design anything. I go to junk shops and charity shops, car boot sales, flea markets, and around all of these things, you just see stuff and you maybe don't know what it is that you're thinking about. Or sometimes if I've got a problem in my head, I will walk around a flea market with that problem. I'm like, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to, and I'm sort of like scanning for any sort of inspiration. And I think the beautiful thing with a flea market is that you don't know. I think when you go onto Pinterest, you kind of sort of know what you're looking for, and you start sort of like pre-programming a sort of slight sort of expectation of what you're going to find. Obviously, your algorithm then starts feeding you all that. But if you really want a blank sheet of paper and you can't curate what you're going to see at all, then junk shops, car boots, all the rest of it, it's like, you know, colours, shapes, patterns, you know, like just random things that you see. This was like a box of talc with a wee twisting head, you know, gloves that are just holding their own package, stuff like that are just cute. That was just like nice shoes the shoes were horrible, but the colour palette was nice. And, you know, different sort of colour palettes that you see in furniture and stuff. This was nice colour palette with just like old style illustration, you know, sort of screen printy vibe, and all of those sort of stuff that you're seeing, I just take photos of. I used to buy all the stuff or try and buy the stuff, but then my house was just so full of shit that I've had to just start just taking photos and being making do with the photos. Just seeing me things sitting next to each other on shelves and stuff like that, you know, and things that you think are just completely random. And I remember like this totally influenced an entire identity for a law firm that we did. And this somehow penetrating your mind. This is supposed to be some work of my studio. It's really banging tune up the back there. Hooray for me. So that's sort of some of the stuff that we get up to. Am I okay for time just now? You use board checklists yet? No, I'll keep going then. So building on that way of thinking, we always try in the studio to try and, when we've got a project for something, we try and boil it down to the simplest parts of that project that we possibly can. And we would ask them, as like one of the very few, sadly, female-run studios, to design a poster to celebrate Kamala Harris becoming the first female vice president in the States. I'm hoping I'm seeing a lot of women in here, which is great. Do you know that it's 0.01% of creative agencies are run by women? Shocking, isn't it? So please step up. So Kamala Harris, right? We're going Kamala Harris, and when you go round the houses, you're doing all your homework. America, Kamala Harris, everything you can think of about her, and you know what to do. So we eventually sort of got down to, right, what's she all about? And she had made this sort of statement about progress and about that if you lift women, you lift everyone in society. You know, that's I guess a true fact. It's like, it's not about women lifting women, it's about everyone lifting women, and makes for a better society. So our sort of solution to that was just to take the flag, give it some dimension, build this platform, and with just a simple statement of, you lift everyone, you lift women, you lift everyone, and create a platform. And it just those little sort of subtle observations and things, and you're staring at that flag for about 2 weeks, you know, like looking like, what can you get out of it? I liked it also because it's got stripes in it. So there's another project we got asked to do, and it was to create a set of beer mats for agencies. Agencies were all asked to do it for this charity thing, and like the Euros is a football tournament, and you had to choose a kind of weird moment and celebrate this weird moment. And we were given Greece winning the European Cup, and they had been like the sort of outsiders, you know, no chance of winning, and they won it. And this was like totally like bizarre for everyone. No one could comprehend this had happened. And so again, you're doing all the homework on Greece. What is it about Greece? Is there any sort of specifics about Greece that's different from like another country winning it? You know, what does football look like? All the rest of it. And something that's very sort of Greek was this sort of smashing of things. And we thought, all right, how can we sort of bring that sort of thing together? And then we just sort of smashed a plate that looked like a football. And what really annoys me about this looks like we photoshopped it, and we didn't. One of the designer's dads dropped about 1 million plates and then cut them like really precisely into a thing, and then it still looks like it's Photoshop. But that sort of thing of, you know, what is it that you're trying to say and who you're trying to say it to, and you're speaking to a football audience who will know Greece winning that was like a sort of earth-shattering moment sort of thing, and sort of, talk to an audience who understands that. This was just a set of posters where we were asked to design something using the word courage. Courage was the brief, and it was like design an A4 poster for a charity, and the charity was going to be creative people. Like, that's who was going to be bidding for all of this work. So it was kind of like our kind of audience, our sort of people. So that's kind of easy to understand, your own kind of audience. Harder to understand, you know, like what a bank in Azerbaijan, you know, might be interested in. But this was, we're speaking to us. So rather than do an A4 thing, and this is what we do all the time, we'll get a brief and then we'll kind of go, oh really? You know, it's like you get the brief and you're going, okay, design an A4 poster. Like, so we're going, says who? You know, says who, it's got to be an A4 anything. So we got an A4 frame, and then we painted that over it, and we stuck a stick on the bottom of it, and we made this kind of like protest sort of placard thing about drawing pictures, not arms. And then we got a soapbox, you know, a big sort of wooden platform box, and painted stand up, speak up on it. And that was about, you know, having your voice heard, and that's courage, you know, like to be able to actually stand up and speak up for yourself. And then the other one we did was we printed out the brief in A3, and then we stuck it in an A4 frame. and it just said a courageous poster. And it's like the only rule is whatever you do must be A4 sized, and then just put that in the frame sort of thing. So we're thinking like we're smart arses basically, and so we were really lucky that the set of posters raised a lot of money for that charity. We were all kind of like top of the pops and all the rest of it, and we were like thinking we were brilliant. And then the reality of the brief of why it was A4 set in, because you had to post it to the highest bidder, and this was why there was an A4 constriction. So the lesson there was, break the brief, yes, but kind of maybe ask the question why it has to be A4 in the first place. So we were then going, oh shit, like what we're going to do with these, and literally Chris, the long-suffering husband, we had to drive around the UK dropping these off to people because there was no way we could post them. It was like, we couldn't wrap them up. We couldn't wrap that up at all because it was just going to get wrecked, and then that was far too heavy to just go anywhere, and then that would break. So we had to drive around. So do ask, is it that bad? They were smiling a minute ago. Come back. And then you'd have seen a bit of earlier when I was showing, when you saw a wee video, a bit of some vegetables all jumping about and things like that. And this was a brief we had got from 4 farmers in Northern Ireland, and they had approached us to say, turn your phone off. Like, could we help them fight Tesco, that they weren't making enough money and that farms in Northern Ireland were closing down. They couldn't compete with, like 5 pence bags of carrots and stuff like that in Tesco's and all vegetables. And I've always been kind of like that, 5 pence carrots, your beauty, and then quite often they'll sit in your fridge and you don't care whether they go off or not. You've paid 5 pence for them. It's like, who cares? But when I was speaking to these farmers and they told us what the problem was, it was basically that they are losing the ability to survive and keep farms going. And that means that the country, and we're in the exact same boat, we're probably worse in the UK, means that you're losing the ability to feed your own country. And if you can't grow and you can't feed, then you rely on imports. And relying on imports means you're at the mercy of whoever it is that's supplying them. And we're there with Russia at the mercy of oil prices, hence why all our heating bills are through the roof and all the rest of it. But when that comes down to food, that's quite fundamental. And if we can't feed ourselves as a country, that's pretty sad days. So they wanted to be able to approach Tesco's, approach the government, and be able to say, we need your support. And when we first got this brief, we're like, right, what budget have you got? And this is the kind of reality that you face quite a lot when the client comes to you, and they're kind of like, we need this, and we need the next thing, and we need all the rest of it. And it's like, right, how much money have you got? And for some reason, money is always the last question. And I don't know in any other industry if that's the way it is. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you always talk last as if money's really dirty, and it's like you're supposed to be embarrassed about talking about money in our industry. And I've learned that I need to talk about money right up front. Do you know what I mean? It's like, right, what's your budget? And everybody says they don't know what their budget is. I don't know, you tell me, maybe work it out. And then, so I just start going now, have you got 100 grand? And then they're like, no. And they're like, no, I've got 2 grand. And they're like, right, so you have got a budget. And, and it's a quick way of sort of shocking people into a reality check of telling you what their actual budget is and knowing whether it's an actual waste of your time or not. And to begin with, you start doing all of these things, and you do things at lower budgets because you're trying to, get a follow the guy, you're trying to get experience and stuff like that, and that's totally your prerogative to do that. But when you start getting responsibilities and you've got wages to pay and you've got buildings to pay for and insurance and Christ knows what all, you need to ask that question up front, and it's like not something to be shy about. It's like, a builder isn't going to do you a favour and build you that house like for cheap, do you know what I mean? Or any other industry. But we're also a sucker for a sob story as well. And we thought we want to help these guys. And, a brief like that, you're like, how are we going to take on Tesco and all these supermarkets and the government? And, every tomato supplier for chili and blah, blah, you know what I mean? Like all of this stuff, and it becomes so sort of overwhelming that you're like, I don't even know where to start. So you start like just kind of like really boiling it down to try and get to what the heart of the matter is. And basically we were going, why would anybody buy local veg? Like, why would you do it? Why would you not buy 5p carrots? So we worked with these 4 farmers, and they're not marketing people. They're not folk who are used to, giving designers briefs, and they're not brand people. They don't know anything about any of this stuff. They're just 4 normal farmer guys who know about vegetables. And we're trying to have workshops with them about marketing and about identity and stuff like that, So how we start all of this stuff, and I don't know if anybody who's doing branding or design, like we always start with like a very sort of simple brand framework, and that's always about putting what's the big idea of that at the heart of your brand, and then you have like your vision, what impact are you looking to have in the world, what are your values, what are the things that that you live by, that make you who you are, that make that company who they are, what is the proposition, what are you telling folk is your offer to the world, what are we all about? Personality is the styling really of how you want to put that forward, and that can be very different. That's why you can have an idea that's the same idea, but the personality of that can be very different. Are you young, youthful, talking to a young audience? Do you need to be cool, edgy? Or do you need to be authoritative and grown up and look very expensive or luxury? Or, so you have all of these different personality traits to work out, and that's really important that you nail that with your client or with the project that you're working on. Even if it's like a uni project, you decide who that audience is that you're aiming for, and it's very rarely a room full of designers that you're aiming for. And then your positioning is that where you occupy in the market. So we're going, right, this is a charity about vegetables. There isn't that many vegetable charities out there, to be fair, but there's a lot of people who are raising awareness about the benefits of eating veg and blah, blah, blah. So this is how we work, and it's all about that red dot in the middle. And then that red dot, the brand essence, which is the big idea, that informs your story, all the copy that goes along with that. And I think, I don't know if you do much copywriting and stuff like that, but all brand and all personality is verbal and visual. You must nail the verbal identity of that personality, how it talks, the vibe of that, the language that it would use. If we're going to speak to the government and we want to go like, yo, veggies, and like that, it's like, that's not quite right. Or if we want to be too aloof, and be, Shakespearean in your language about how you understand vegetables, and it's like, where do you switch people off? These guys had decided they didn't want to be, a lot of charities go for that, like pulling on the heartstring kind of look, and it's like, feel sorry for me, everybody's dying, give us money. And these guys decided that they didn't want to be that kind of charity. They didn't want to be like all rotten veg and everything rotten in your fridge. They wanted to be upbeat in it. So all of that sort of stuff decides all your logo, your strapline, all of that creates your visual verbal identity. And then when you're creating anything, depending on the scale of it, you need to know that that's going to work across all your different channels. And then it's going to work tonally for different audiences. So you might have to have, a consumer facing thing, and you might have the most joyful brand in the world, but at some point in time, you might have to fire people. And you can't be kind of like, yo, dudes, and then you're like, hey, you're fired, by the way, so you have to, work out that when you need to be a grown up, and then when you need to either have fun or speak in a more consumer language. And all of that usually goes on to create a set of guidelines. Guidelines, I used to think, was like the worst thing you could be given as a job to do would be to create a set of guidelines. You're like, oh my God, it's like so dry and so boring. But what I learned was, when you're creating a brand and you're creating the identity, you're creating the verbal, the visual, how that's going to go out to the world, it's going to go to other people to produce. And if you don't write those guidelines correctly, it's like an instruction manual of how do you get what you want? How do you get other people to do what you want? And that's what the guidelines are. So I write it from my perspective of, I want you to do this, please, so that you don't fuck up my brand. That's kind of like what guidelines are. First thing when you're starting anything, be aware of the competition, right? So any journey of any creation of anything, you need to know who you're talking to and who what world surrounds them. So these guys, you know, the competition around them is, you know, you've got all these foreign brands, you've got all these brands in Tesco's and stuff like that pretend to be foreign brands, you know, that all look like your 5p carrots and all this sort of stuff, and they all look like they've got like, you know, wood blocky sort of stuff, and it's all a bit green and farmy looking, and you're totally seduced into thinking that this is from a farm, like Britishy farm kind of vibe. It's not. So we surround ourselves with all of this stuff, and then what we usually create to have a sense of direction of where to go is a positioning matrix. And for this one, we were looking at, do you want to be contemporary, or do you want to be traditional? You know, do you want to be like traditional kind of farmy vibe, or contemporary? Do you want to be very kind of informational, or do you want to be inspirational? And, you know, they had decided that they wanted to be inspirational, wanted to be contemporary. And so we set up there. When you're putting any matrix together, it could be, you know, any different. These are very basic matrices, and this is what works for us. And you're always trying to get them to go up into the top right. So whenever you're writing the two words that you think they should be going, we put them on that side because they feel like it's progress. Like if you ended up that the words that you think that they should be going for is down here, it feels like they're going backwards. So it's a total psychological thing when you're presenting to folk to make them feel like they're going upwards and forwards. So this is where they wanted to be. And another really useful thing when you're trying to nail like what the type of personality should be for that brand is we use these sliders. And that do you use these kind of tools already, like when you're studying? I mean, it doesn't matter what you're creating, whether I talk about brand all the time, that's what I do, but whatever it is that you're creating, you need to understand what type of personality that you're doing it in. So we'll ask them, do you want to be like youthful, established? Do you want to be subtle or in your face? Do you want to be like friendly or authoritative, you know, natural, industrial, or, you know, unconventional or mainstream? And then when the client plots these out and they all agree on it, that's your brief. Then, do you know what I mean? That's what you go back to them, and when they start saying, oh no, it doesn't look friendly enough for it, do you know what I mean? Or it doesn't look authoritative enough. And you said, right, well, you were way over here on friendly, you know, so now you're saying that it needs to be authoritative. I've now got the right to charge you more money, you know, and that's kind of how it goes, you know, because you end up, it's called scope creep, right? When you've written a brief, a proposal for a job that you're going to do, and you'll be like, I'm doing the concept stages, the immersion stage concepts, the development of one of those concepts, the refinement of that concept, and then the final sort of stage of crafting it all. When you've presented your concepts, and then they're like, right, I'll go for route 2, with a bit of route 1 and half of that one, and they want to merge it all together. They start at that point in time, they can then be like, well, I just think it's too energetic, it's too modern, it's too whatever. I think it should be much more this. I realise now that it should be, well, sorry, we've now spent that budget doing what you told us. So this sort of thing's a really useful tool to then be able to go back and say, we need to revisit the concept stage then and give us more money. So with this, getting to the big idea on this, and this is just kind of trying to show you a bit of the journey of this project and fitting the word journey in every time, you know, journey, creative journey. Why is local veg better than imported veg, right? And now you're kind of like, don't know. And usually with this sort of thing as well, you try to get to what's the one thing that is more important than anything else that people need to know, right? What's the one thing? And then you create for me, I create my identity around that. But they didn't have one thing. They ended up having like 5 things. They were like, oh, it's healthier. It's got more vitamins in it and nutrients because it hasn't been in transit. So it's like when you're buying something at a local market, that hasn't been, well, maybe at a local market, but at a farmer's market, that's not been on a van for 100 years. So it's tastier because it's fresher. It's got to you quicker. It's better for the environment because it's grown locally. It's not being shipped on a container for 6 months or 6 weeks on the back of a ship. And it's better value for money. So even though you think 5p carrots are better than like paying £1 for carrots, the pound carrots will last a couple of weeks in your fridge, where the 5p carrots will be off within about sort of 2 days. So the value of having all of that And we're going, oh my God, there's like 5 things to have to kind of communicate how we're going to do it. And and it was better for the community as well, which is really important, because if you can't feed yourself, genuinely, if we can't feed ourselves going forward as a society, we're a bit screwed, and we're relying on like Putin supplying carrots, you know. So keeping the money there. So we thought, right, local veg is good for you in all these ways. This was our sort of thing. You're going, right, it's good for you, loads of different ways. It's good for you. And this is where, you know, you're going, right, it's good for you. You try to come up with ideas, and I usually sort of like pace about when I'm like trying to come up with stuff, and I'm like, it's good for you. It's strong, it's powerful, it's all these sort of stuff. So then we're like, right, it's powerful. So we thought, right, this veg is really powerful, and what does that mean? And we're going, right, okay. And because it was Northern Irish, we put a wee spin on it, going powerful, right? Is anybody Irish, Northern Irish? No, it's like somebody could do the accent for me. And but we thought, right, that's where we'll bring in our wee Northern Irish kind of slant, that it's powerful produce, and powerful in Northern Ireland's a very good thing if you're powerful. And so this became the sort of idea around all of these things, was it was powerful produce. And then that's the brief to the design team at that point in time. It's like, you now need to bring to life what powerful produce looks like. You've got your sliders, you know what the personality is going to be, you know what all the benefits are, you know all of this stuff. And my team get involved in strategy right from the day one. They're involved with the client, understanding all of that, so that it's embedded in them. So we've presented to the client. Now, you've seen what it ended up as in that wee video, but this is what we ended up presenting, going, what does powerful produce look like? What does power look like? So one of the designers was like, you know, this kind of notion of radiating sort of power, you know, and so this was like powerful tasty, you know, like big lips with this sort of courgette, you know, it's powerful for your pocket, it's, you know, it's good for your health, all of this is powerful for this, that and the next thing. So we thought we'll have all these radiating things coming out. So that was our sort of route one. And then in our wee logo, like we've got a wee carrot going down in the V, and just wee observations like this, and we're going, right, that's route one, brilliant. Route two, the other designer was like, you know, powerful for her meant, you know, these giant veg, you know, it's like they're like so packed full of all this stuff. It's like they're massive, and we would show them all over Northern Ireland, these massive veg, and like, oh, they're so epic and all the rest of it. And we were like, you know, okay, right, we'll go for that as a sort of route two. She took the wee map thing as her logos, Veg Northern Ireland, and when you present your concepts, you have to visualise everything these days as well. You have to give some kind of clue of visualising it, because back in the day you used to be able to do a quick sketch and sort of show the gist, but now that the clients seem so, I don't mean stupid, but a bit stupid, and that they need to see it. You know what I mean? They need to see the route, and they need to see where it could go, and they need to see it on a website, and they need to see it on a thing, or they can't imagine. Do you know what I mean? You're like, you can imagine what that's going to look like on a website. I don't need to design it, but sadly they can't. So this was anyway the giant veg, and this was like perfect for your community, all this. And then this was the third route, and this was the actual Northern Irish girl that was in our team, and she thought, right, we'll go for the patter, you know, like the banter. And this would be the route, and it was like all of these veg would be having a conversation. They'd be in these wee sort of shop signy, you know, those wee things that you get sticking in markets and all this kind of stuff. And it would be like a language-based approach, you know. So, you know, these rockets are having a wee chat with each other, and trying to give it this sort of sense of sort of friendly personality. And you could use language then to talk about why it was good for you, and talk about all the million things that you needed to talk about. So we presented all of that to the 4 farmers. Now they're all in, this was during COVID, and they're all in at their farms in, you know, like a stable, or they're in a, you know, cabin of some sort, or a wee shed and all this sort of stuff. And we're in our various homes all sort of presenting. And those 4 farmers have been the best clients I've ever worked with in about, like, what's that, 28 years or something. Instead of going like, oh yeah, oh yeah, like the clients do, and they're trying to be nice, they don't want to hurt your feelings. They were just like, no. We were like, right, no what? And they're like, no, none of it works. And we were like, how do you know what for? And then they said, they were like, giant fucking veg. And they were like, our veg isn't any bigger than anybody else's veg. And we were like, I know, but it's just like it's a metaphor saying like it's really powerful and all the rest. And like, no, that looks like genetically modified veg. Like as if we've pumped it full of stuff and it's giant. And we were like, oh fuck, so it does. It's like, oh god, it looks like, and as if you're going to go to the shop and get a carrot like that. Do you know what I mean? Like shit. And then that's stupid. So we were like, all right. And then like the first route with all the radiating power. And they're like, I don't know what you're doing. It's like Superman and all this sort of stuff. And they're like, but I can't remember any of the veg. I just remember big lips and a big heart and a big whatever. I don't remember what the veg was. And we were like, it's the wrong way around. Like the lips is the big thing, and the heart and the purse and all of this is the big thing. And they were like, so that's no good. And then the thing with the language, they were like, who's got time to read all that shit? We were like, all right. So they just said no. They were like, no, I don't like it. And we were like, right, okay. But going into the presentation, I didn't like any of them either. And you run out of time. And I was kind of like, you're presenting stuff and you're like, it isn't answering the brief, it's not cracking it. And so when they said they didn't like it, I was agreeing with them anyway, because I was like, not for the reasons, I hadn't actually realised those reasons. And that's where it's important that we should have been asking people, what do you see? And they'd have been like, we see genetically modified veg, and be like, shit. So like talking to each other and saying, what do you see? And it's like, oh, I see whatever. It's so important. And so we went back to the chopping board at that point in time, and it was literally, we just got a load of veg, and it's like everybody start chopping up veg, because we're like, it's not showing the veg, it's not showing the goodness that's in the veg. And we're like, like looking at veg, and we're like, how do you show the goodness in the veg? Like, like when, like, do we squeeze it? Do whatever? So it was like everybody like makes something vegetarian for the dinner, and then we're like chopping up all the veg, and going, literally looking at slices of chopped up veg as you're chopping it into a soup or whatever like that, going, actually, this is the inside of the veg. I forgot that was coming. But it's like that's where the good stuff is on the inside. So that's what we ended up doing, was going, right, the observation of sort of forcing ourselves to go back and look physically at the stuff, have the product in your hand, try and see how you can bring that to life. So we showed them that, they loved that, and I thought, that's brilliant, we've nailed it. So, and we had come up with this line of pick powerful produce was like the call to action, because in a campaign you're always trying to have a call to action, which is like, how do we approach this? So we had done that, and then we're like, brilliant, we've nailed it, fucking D&AD, here we come, and all this. And then as part of that, we had sort of found this font. When you're working on a very, very tight budget, you can't go off and be like, yeah, just imagine that, Dalton Mag or someone's going to design me this font. So this was $12, and it was a sort of unicase, kind of Irish, kind of farmy feeling. It was €12, and the veg, we had to stick to a budget, so we had like €7 per image, or we had to take the images ourselves if we couldn't get any cheap enough. And we just did them with like a phone. And they're not trying to say you can get away with doing stuff like that when the idea isn't look at this gorgeous veg. If it was all about, this sexy, exquisite veg, if that's the idea, then we would have had to got a photographer to light that and make it all beautiful with, little wet leaves and all that kind of jazz. But that wasn't the need for this. Colour palette, obviously inspired by the veg itself. And then that went on, and that gave us this tool, this veg slicey tool, to be able to become the graphic design glue that then becomes like recognisable as part of that campaign then, and you can use that to put all your messages in. And we're like, brilliant. Then the guys go, the wee logo was a turnip, right? And then the carrot guy was like, I don't sell turnips. And so we've done the identity at this point, right? and they're going, oh, I don't sell turnips either, I sell carrots. And then our guy's like, I sell broccoli. And he's going, oh, yeah, I sell leeks. And it was like one guy sold turnips, right? And we were like, oh, God. And but because we had gone for this wee slice with the Northern Ireland inside of it, we then were able to give everybody a logo of their own. So Carrot Guy, was like, calm down. So that was a kind of probably a happy accident, and it actually made the project better, luckily. And again, they couldn't afford much, but they could afford stickers. They got stickers and a business card each, was what every sort of farmer that did a different vegetable, that's what they got to be able to help sort of start promoting this and going to the government and starting to tell them about VegNI and what they were all about and what they stood for. This is a fake visual. This is what we're saying, what you could have the budget for actually making little metal pin badges. We didn't think that was like bigger than the budget for the project, so we didn't do it. And then this is some of the comms in one of the shops, whatever it is that they're trying to say. And then this is two of the farmers. They went to the Balmoral show, and then they launched this identity at the Balmoral show, and it was on the news and it was all over the place. And these two guys were totally happy as Larry with all their stuff, and they then sort of got the attention of government. They've got major funding. They've now got their own marketing team, and they're doing really well. And Adrian, who runs one of the farms, his daughter is one of a few kind of like female farmers in Northern Ireland. That's part of why I wanted to do the project. She's got her own BBC series of young farmers, and she's like the kind of chief hostess of it all and stuff like that. So that's the power of doing a nice bit of design. I think I'm going to stop there because I realise I've been yapping forever, and I don't know if you want to do some questions. I've got a million tons of other slides, but then Chris needs a shot. Yeah, that's fine. I've just kind of stopped halfway through, but anyway, thank you. I hope that's some use of a project journey in London.